Part 4. Monday, 15th of October, the big day arrives. Chemo day. My first session. After about an hour and a half, my arm with the poison going into it begins to feel like it's on fire. I ask the nurse, is this normal? She says she'll slow it down a bit. Instead of a 2-hour session, it's now 4 hours. Arm is still burning. Tender to touch, and also my hand and wrist. I have to take my watch off. It's becoming unbearable. Finally it's over, and time for the next taxi ride home. I'm told to keep out of the cold, wear a scarf over my mouth if I go outside. If I have to get anything from the fridge, wear some gloves. My fingers could get tingly, and my arm is feeling useless. I can hardly move it and it hurts like hell. So much for chemotherapy. I'm not sure I can take 6 months of this. Next day my arm still hurts like hell and it's difficult to move. This makes changing my stoma bag very difficult, trying to do it one-handed. As soon as my fingers meet something cold, they begin to tingle like mad. Even taking cutlery out of the kitchen drawer sets it off, because it's cool to the touch. Door handles too. After a few days of this, I decided to stop taking the chemo tablets. No point in adding fuel to the fire. I have a couple of days of very bad diarrhea. After about 16 days, the tingling in the fingers wears off. Thursday, 25th of October, an appointment with the oncologist at Milton Keynes Hospital. I tell him to forget about any more chemo. I explain how I've been, but he says, I'd rather you didn't stop. Okay. I ask him outright, you say after the operation all the cancer is gone. If I don't have the chemo, what's my chances? He tells me a 30% chance it could come back in 5 years' time. And if I have the chemo, I ask? A 60% chance we can stop it recurring in 5 years. I think a moment. So even with the chemo, there's still 30% chance it will come back in 5 years. Not very good odds, is it? But if I reduce the dose a bit, he says. I'll think about it briefly, then say, okay, I'll give it another go. Monday, 12th of October, I start the second session of chemo. Same as last time. Arm feels like it's on fire. 4 hours I put up with this. I find out the dose has not been reduced like I was told. Bastard. I get home and decide no more chemo. I'll take my chances. 17 days I feel out of action with my fingers. Difficult to even cook. The next few days I develop a really bad cold. I can hardly walk around the house. I feel dizzy, really cold. I feel like shit. Arse is still leaking, pus and blood, and on top of all this there is some delay in getting the stoma supplies I need. If I was a dog I'd be put down. Had an appointment at Milton Keynes Hospital with the oncologist, but I cancelled it. I feel too rough to go out. He rings me back later in the day and I tell him what's been happening and I'm going to stop the chemo treatment. He asks how I'm coping. Not very well. He asks if I'd like to go into hospital. No. A bit later in the day my GP rings me to see how I am. Apparently the oncologist rang her because he was a bit concerned. We have a talk and she tells me if I want to stop the chemo, then stop it. My decision, and do not let anyone else force you into doing something you do not want to do. I like her. Monday, 26th of November. The district nurse comes round to see me, takes my temperature, blood pressure, everything else, and says everything seems fine. It's all probably part of the side effects to the chemo. 3 days later I have an appointment with the oncologist at Milton Keynes Hospital. I struggle to get there. I'm determined to tell him I'm not doing the chemo anymore. There's a bit of a wait because they're running behind. So in the meantime they take my temperature and blood pressure. Temperature is 38 degrees, high. Blood pressure is very low. I wait in a waiting room to see the doctor. I tell him I'm not continuing with the chemo. He seems more concerned about my temperature and blood pressure. So I'm wheeled down in a wheelchair to a room with a bed and put on a drip for about 4 hours. My vitals are taken every hour and I start to recover. I have a blood test and then I'm sent home. Tuesday, 11th of December. An appointment at Churchill Hospital to see the urologist. Explained about my arse constantly bleeding and pus, and I'm getting increasingly fed up with everything. He puts his finger up my bum to see for himself. He tells me that the bowel surgeon who did the operation is leaving the department, but he'll speak with another surgeon to take over my care. Then home. One of the interesting things that happened throughout all this are a copy of letters they send you that have been going to other surgeons and also your GP to update them on your progress. You can learn a lot from these. Naturally it's all in the language they understand, but with the help of Google to translate it into layman's terms, I've learnt a lot more, and their opinions of you. Recommendations for community help, which I've never had, how they perceive how you're coping, and even that at times I'm clinically depressed. And that's where we are at the moment. My weight is 10 stone 9, possibly some more radiotherapy to investigate these nasty little cancer cells that have reappeared. Another possible operation on the anus to remove them and close it all off. My arse still bleeds pus and blood on a daily basis and is very sore. And I'm on antidepressants, which don't seem to be working. Let's hope 2019 is a better year. It can't be any fucking worse.